Hello. I want to talk a bit about rune scripts from my level of understanding. First, the runes, as you know, possess occult properties. My practicing Galdr stuff here, as young as it is, um, and sigil magic is built upon and around runic magic, for the most part. As some of us know, this kind of Galdr is not limited to the runes alone. They are very old symbols. According to the myth, they were lost deep in the land of the Vanir, and Odin learned about them from the goddess Freya. Some believe that the likely candidate for these lost runes are the Vinca script from a civilization that lived in the Danube Valley. Whatever form the runes evolved from, they still encompass the same esoteric and magical nature. Regardless of form and meaning, we access these properties through a number of different channels in various ways. We're all familiar with the Elder Futhark, and I believe it to be the closest system to their magical influences. Uh, that's just my personal view. Later rune scripts are more attributed to written form, and it's my understanding and belief that runes were not originally used in that format. In fact, I don't. I think that sort of came along at a later time with the younger Futhark. It's the Swedish, Norwegian variety, the Danish, the Helsing, and the lesser known Greenlandic, um, which is very similar to uh, the Danish and Swedish system. Hardly any difference at all. And then there are systems that are built upon those scripts, but in a 24 or so letter script, like the uh, unlike the younger Freelar, which is commonly 16. I've seen 3 or 4 different scripts attributed to Iceland. There is the Anglo-Saxon Futhark. There's the medieval rune script, and a literal treasure trove of scripts from the manuscripts. These are incredibly helpful in not just Galdr stuff here, but rune binding and formulary as well. I sometimes use them as representations of certain runic characters in the effort to make them less obvious. Uh, Cipher runes serve as the same purpose. Um, Now, I sure as hell am no expert in these areas, but cipher runes, from my perspective, are cryptic in nature. They are basically an encoded representation of the runes according to their individual positions in the script and the A tier they belong to. One of the things that blew my mind earlier on is was how similar some of them are to the Agua. The ciphers take on several variations actually. The few forms that I use I have found incredibly useful, but they are so diverse that some people have even developed their own. And that's what I mean when I say the runes in form are an evolution upon themselves. One can speculate that Icelandic practitioners were aware of this, and that's why they collected multiple scripts from various cultures that their Norse ancestors had encountered. They also developed ciphers of their own, as far as I can tell from what I've seen in the Hold manuscript. Some practitioners of some practitioners of Seidr have certain scripts and sigils and ciphers, for all I know, um, that are not really of this earth, but are channeled from the spirit world, even the gods and goddesses or the ancestors. I'm definitely not the best practitioner of Seidr, but I can stipulate that people can acquire and do acquire esoteric symbols and characters in such a way. although I've never stayed in a trance long enough to receive entire scripts of letters and such. But one really cool thing about it is I would receive certain symbols that I've never seen and would find them or some representation of them or some similar form of them in some grimoire or magical handbook that I've never once laid eyes on or flipped through. And that usually happens soon afterwards. Um, some people believe in, I think the magic of things is in the coincidences. Some kind of numb when people say, oh, there's no such thing as coincidences. I'm like, coincidences. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Or when people says, oh, that's just a coincidence. I'm like, yep, you're right. um, Invocation sigils. Tim and I got to talk about. I was actually talking to him about. I was actually talking to him. I was telling him about how I don't use or keep any sigils from the manuscripts or any that I've channeled during a ritual. In the past, I've used everything from a triangle or pentagram while burning wormwood or some incense. The gods all have a sigil. Certain spirits have a sigil that can be used to invoke them. Uh, so that so that one can communicate with them. But because I don't keep any sigil for invocation, I simply allow one to channel through me when I am fairly deep into trance. And it usually works when I've gone deeper into that state. And I think maybe I should be drawing these sigils up before I banish them or wash them away. But the one time I memorized a sigil detail for detail, a fairly simple one, I uh, used it again in the same tense and it didn't work out so well. Had a totally opposite effect. In fact, little to no effect at all. And I noticed that I noticed if I was to repeat the same ritual, I will get a different sigil each time around for the same purpose or the same entity, the same consciousness. And on that note, people can draw any number of theories. Perhaps the gods all have more than one sigil. It's not a leap of the imagination, and we're supposed to forget about them, maybe. And maybe it's just how invocation works for me sometimes. If you look at the various names for Odin, there are certain sigils that for those for those embodiments, guises of Odin that can be used to invoke him in that guise. Um, However, it is said that Odin is not uh, very trustworthy when invoked. In fact, he can be rather unpredictable when invoked. So, I don't know. So some people advise others to kind of do this at their own discretion or think long and hard and try to create the right what's the word I'm looking for, mental and the right authenticity of the self uh, to present outwards, to radiate outwards, because certain consciousnesses you can't pull a fast one on. If you're going in with some kind of facade, then you're not going to achieve what you hope to achieve. In fact, it could backfire on you. Well, that's one of my little takes on it from personal experience and from what I gather. But I don't know. People experience these things totally differently, and that's just the nature of the magic period. Um, what was next? Non-runic and arcane symbols are sometimes used in Galdr stuff here. I mentioned the Danube Valley script, and that is one example. Esoteric symbolism of all kinds, whether it's geometrical patterns, geometric characters, pentagram, septagram, planetary and astrological symbols, petroglyphs, cave paintings, car and business logos. You see how limitless this can be. So I've adopted the Vinca script and certain Slavic symbols, but I have yet to really implement them into my work. And on that particular note, I suppose some people like to incorporate symbolism and lettering from various cultures, like, say, Hebrew, Native, or South American, and such. Uh, but I would prefer to be just a little bit conservative. I don't tell people what they can or can't do. Um, I'm no expert, obviously, and people got to do what works for them, right? Uh, just like I do. Um, uh, but like I said, I choose to be a bit conservative, especially with the runes and Norse spirits and the like. But on the other hand, if you look at Icelandic sorcery itself, seems to be somewhat multicultural on its own. Keeping that in mind, um, I recently read a National Geographic article about how folks in, I think it was Venezuela, are going through a kind of a health crisis and shortage of medical supplies and personnel. And people are turning to shamans and magical healers. On the main photograph, pardon me, there's kind of a cough going around here, and I'm gonna go get some fir needles to kind of, deal with that. Um, on the main photograph, the afflicted person is in the center of this Galdr stuff here that is drawn in what looks like salt or some kind of powder. And 3 or 4 people are laying face up at certain points inside the sigil around the person. And in the description, it says local shamans uh, channel Viking spirits in an effort uh, to heal the afflicted person, or something to that effect. But it says in quote Viking spirits. So something like that speaks volumes on whether a culture matters or not. I somewhat believe, I personally somewhat believe the runes and consciousness resonate more to people who are of Germanic origin, and I can't prove that only because of my experience with. I only believe that because of my experience with DNA activation. It is just my theory, and to be quite honest, it could be bullshit. I have to be honest about that. The only thing that even slightly supports it, Germanic people have spread around the world more than any other culture, and we've intermingled with pretty much everyone. And that being said, you'd have a seriously hard time finding a person who doesn't have Germanic or Scandinavian ancestry. Oh, I don't know who said that, but it really opened my eyes to. It's probably Raven who said said that, and really opened my eyes a bit. I can be a little closed-minded here and there. Um, Whether culture makes a difference or not, you be the judge. I neither agree nor disagree. Um, I wish I could go more in depth about the ciphers. But the practice is far too broad and incredibly individualistic. Um, when it comes to magic, I don't care if somebody has been practicing 2 years or 40 years. There are no real professionals to this kind of work, and I believe we are all novices in one way or another. I've been practicing for 8 years now, and I've learned seriously practicing for about 8 years now, and I've learned more than um, people I know who've practiced for decades. But a person who started practicing last year can sometimes come along and teach me something I never knew or considered. The point is, the learning process is never ending. 8 years ago, I knew nothing about uh, anything Norse or Germanic, let alone the mythology, nor that I myself was Danish. I actually know a crap ton about my ancestry now. Um, I knew nothing about the runes, Galdr stuff, or any of it. I worked with the runes for 7 years, Galdr, Bind Runes, Chaos Magic for 3 years, and Galdr Staffir for about a year now. And whether I'm good at any of it or not, I don't worry about too much. I just let the work speak for itself. And that's something I hope more people come to understand. We are more successful when we go with what works. And sometimes we can achieve what we want by the doing things the way somebody else would, but even if we're successful in that regards, there's a downside to it. It's not original. Um, and I can honestly say that it's so much more powerful. Uh, it's so much more meaningful when it's something that we have figured out on our own, or invented on our own, or honed and perfected uh, with our own work. Um, to quote a Wiccan author by the name of Scott Cunningham, trees in nature, I think this is how it goes. Trees in nature give wisdom books never dreamt of, whatever. uh, anyway, I must be signing off. Got a busy weekend ahead. It's been a really busy week. Today, you were watching my nephew and my two nephews, and one of them and my son, they're both in that 2-year-old stage, and so when they get together, it's pretty chaotic. It really is. And so yeah, we had a lot going on today. That aside, got some new laminate flooring for my son's bedroom. Got to put on, and yeah, there's always something going on. Um, hoping early next week to get our firewood finally. It's a little bit late in the season, and I need to get our shed fully stocked. My brother-in-law and I had an arrangement, but he's become very busy, so I had to buy some birch. It's late, but we'll soon be prepared for winter nonetheless. Besides, this cool fall air is perfect for wood splitting and any other kind of work. Absolutely best time of the year. I love it. Oh, um, before I sign out, I want to say thank you to Errol Bolviker for the incredible design and the hard work he put in creating it, and also for the work he does because he gives to his practice like nobody I've seen. It's his life, and just like me, I think it may have been what saved his life. I don't know. I do know I'll never be as good as he is. Um, I'm very stoked about the design, and I really want to just show it off to everybody. But I think I'll do that when it's actually on my skin. At the moment, I can't be throwing money at tattoos. Plus, my wife won't let me get one without her. uh, I'm trying for us to do it around Yule time because it's the holiday. Because it's the holidays, but more importantly, become kind of a holier time for me. It's a holy time, period, ancestrally speaking. Um, anyway, uh, thanks for watching. Have a good evening.